Hey everybody, it is Trags back with another episode of the JungleRoar podcast here in season number 3 of said podcast. And it is my pleasure to welcome back for the first time in season number 3, the one and only James Rapien of SI.com, allbengals.com, and of course his Locked On Bengals podcast, one of the very best football, not just Bengal podcasts, but football podcasts out there. I done enough to appease you and bring you back for season number 3, James?
Yeah, absolutely. Season 3. Yeah, I'm all in, Trags. I appreciate you having me.
Anytime. So we have a lot to catch up on in this 30-minute episode. First of all, the draft. It just completed, obviously, on Saturday. The Bengals get 8 picks out of the draft in 7 rounds. And I want to get your read on the Bengals taking 3 defensive picks for the second year in a row with their first 3 picks in the draft. What did you make of that?
Yeah, I think we knew they were in on defense early, and that was the most likely scenario for pick 28. I said it coming out of the combine and felt it throughout, even though we spent plenty of time. I know I did, at least, talking about Dalton Kincaid, Jahmyr Gibbs.
Right.
I know people were bummed that they didn't take Michael Mayer. I don't think they were ever in on Michael Mayer in round
No,
one.
I agree.
That doesn't mean they weren't in on tight end, just not Michael Mayer in round one. And so I think that, the first 3 rounds, I thought they wanted to come out of the first 2 days with the cornerback. So when you take Myles Murphy, who was the top player on their board, and you go that route, I went into day 2 thinking for sure pick 60 was probably going to be a corner. It's one of the few things pre-draft that I got right, I would say, about this class. Just the way the board fell, it was hard to predict. But pick 3, that third rounder, 95th overall, I think that was the one in Jordan Battle that surprised some, including myself, because
Correct.
it felt like they were going to go offense and that they would pivot there. But I can't knock them. And I know people were surprised. I can't knock them for a few reasons. One, he was clearly the top player on their board. They traded down, which ended up filling that punter hole, which we can talk about. And so they get value there, and they still get the guy they wanted. It's one of those things where I don't think they necessarily went into the draft thinking they had to go safety in the first 2 days, but the guy was like 30 spots higher on their board. I think he had a second round grade on their board. So the fact that he was still there at the end of round 3, I don't blame them for taking him. So Lou Anarumo's a happy man. I don't blame the Bengals for it. And I think their defense is much, much stronger today than it was a week ago.
2 things. I love the fact that they're adding speed. You absolutely need speed in today's NFL, and you need an edge presence. They accomplished that in the first 3 throughout the first 3 picks of this year's NFL draft. Love the pick of Myles Murphy because of the value. I mean, he was rated, James, as you know, and you studied the draft a lot more than I did. Myles Murphy was a mid-first round talent level type of prospect, and they got him at the end of the first round, which is always a good thing. And then they got one of the fastest corners in the draft in DJ Turner II in with their second round pick. To me, if you're going to keep pace, and if Lou Anarumo is going to be able to replicate what he did last year when his pass defense only allowed 300 yards once, and that was to Tom Brady in garbage time, you're going to need speed and you're going to need a presence on the edge. They need to get to the quarterback more than 30 times that they did last year. And I think they took a step in the right direction on, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, simply because if you're going to get to the quarterbacks, obviously you need to have the wide receivers covered. What do you think?
I love the Turner pick. He's my favorite pick of their first 3 selections, because you're talking about elite speed, sticky in man coverage. Yeah, the size is something where, if he's guarding AJ Brown, well, you might not feel as confident in it just because of size. But you look at the way he tested, his build, all of those things, he looks a lot like Denzel Ward coming out. And I'm not saying he's Denzel Ward, but I'm just saying there's clearly a blueprint to a guy like him succeeding on the outside.
Right.
And that's what I think he's going to be. I think he's going to be a boundary corner. Not that he can't play the nickel. I think he's a boundary corner. And he's someone that really fortifies that defensive backs room, because as they kind of overhaul it and have this nice blend of youth along with veterans, you want, like you said, speed, because young guys especially are going to make some mistakes. Guess what hides some of those mistakes? Speed. Cam Taylor-Britt can run.
Yep.
You have a guy in DJ Turner. Juan Drago is his name, by the way, like his actual name, which is a badass name. Sorry if I'm not allowed to cuss. That's awesome
You
name.
can feel free to cuss. Go ahead.
And so no, I think that DJ Turner is a huge boost. And he was, if I had to bet, Trags, I think he was top 45 on their board, like high round 2. I don't think he was a first rounder on their board. But if they had traded down from pick 28, I think he was in play at pick 35, 37. And so for him to fall because of length, I think that's it. As much as we want to talk about size, I think his arm length, if his arms are another inch longer, we're not having this discussion about him at pick 60. Sign me up. I think it was a great pick. He played in the Big Ten, physical defense with Michigan. Obviously, we're familiar with Dax Hill. It's going to be fun to watch Lou Anarumo use these chess pieces, because this guy is arguably the best athlete out of all of the athletes they've added to that room over the past couple of years, and certainly in the secondary at least. So that's really, really exciting.
We got a chance on Monday to talk to Dax Hill about his former teammate, DJ Turner II. What were your takeaways from what Dax Hill had to say about DJ Turner and how the two played together at Michigan, and how maybe that projects to the Bengals defense in their secondary?
I think he's excited. I think part of Dax right now, he's anxious to get out there and show what he can do. Last year was hard on him, and so that's part of it for him. But as far as adding a familiar face like DJ Turner, reuniting with him, knowing what he brings to the table, I think he knows it's a really good fit. He said he was talking with DJ throughout the draft, some about the idea of him getting picked at 60. So no, I think it's a good fit. And again, the team speed. You're talking about a guy in Dax Hill, who I think his goal is to play at 200 pounds this year, runs a 4.38. You're talking about Tyson Anderson ran a 4.36, Cam Taylor-Britt 4.38. And then you add a guy like DJ Turner 4.26. So now those guys had elite speed. Now you're talking about world-class speed, and a guy that plays as fast as the track speed that he showed in that 40-yard dash. I think it's a huge addition, and the familiarity with those guys, I think it's going to help Dax. I think it'll help DJ as both transition into new roles. Turner obviously just transitioning into the NFL. I don't necessarily think he'll start, but Dax Hill is going to start, and he's transitioning into that role too. So it'll be nice to have him around.
I don't think it's just a gimmick that, oh, yeah, he went to Michigan. I actually think it's a big deal to have two players at key positions, Dax Hill at safety and DJ Turner potentially at a corner spot or playing somewhere in that secondary, perhaps in nickel and dime packages or even quarters packages, who know each other, because you're talking about a defense that Lou Anarumo acknowledges is at a doctorate level sometimes. He asks the defensive backs to do a lot of different things, play instinctively, read and react. And I think when you have another guy out there that you know, that you're familiar with, that helps in that process, very much so.
Yeah, I agree with you. I totally agree. And I think Dax, I still think they're going to move him around. I think that's the beauty of getting a guy like Battle, is you can move him into the nickel if you need to. You don't need him to play safety every second, and you can go with some 3 safety looks, even though you lost Von Bell and Jesse Bates too. So I think that is part of it. But yeah, look, that Michigan defense has been very, very good in recent years. And so adding guys that went up against world-class players, Dax in the college football playoff, obviously, and in the Big Ten, and then DJ Turner, same thing, back-to-back years, had to face those Ohio State receivers. It's not like he was playing against a bunch of scrubs here. He was playing against some high-level competition and played at a high level. So I love it. He can bring the heat from a coverage standpoint. I think he's pretty sticky and athletic, but at the same time, he'll hit, even though he's not the biggest corner in the world.
Jordan Battle, does he push Nick Scott for a spot as a starter, as a safety in the secondary?
I think he has a shot, but ultimately, I think he's more of a sub package player that'll play some. but this first year is going to be about getting acclimated, contributing on special teams, all of those things. I think they really like Nick Scott. And what it is Jordan Battle gives you insurance at those two spots, of course, but he also allows you to still run some of that, the Von Bell stuff that you did run if you're Lou Anarumo, because I think he can be that type of box safety that Von was. That doesn't mean he needs to start for that to happen, because Nick Scott and Dax Hill can sort of be interchangeable, like completely interchangeable. I
Yes,
know
I
Lou said,
agree with that.
yeah, Lou said, oh, with Jesse and Von, they're interchangeable. Well, not really. They're completely different players. You don't necessarily want Jesse taking 30 snaps around the line of scrimmage, and you don't want Von Bell dropping in coverage 30 times a game, in deep coverage, that is. So I think that this way you can be kind of interchangeable. It frees up Dax to be as versatile as possible. You can use Nick Scott in that deep safety role when Dax is moving around. And then it also gives you some Tyson Anderson insurance. He didn't play in an NFL game last year outside of the preseason, practiced with the team at the end of the year. I would be comfortable with him as your third safety, but you add a guy in Jordan Battle who can push for that spot, and now you suddenly are 4 deep, 5 if you count veteran Michael Thomas, but he's more of a special teamer at this stage. So I really like the Bengals safety room. I know there were some that were really concerned about it after their losses in free agency. I think they're going to be just fine at safety. Maybe not as good as they were last year and in recent years, but just fine this season.
Also understand, and you know this, James, as well as anybody, you're not just drafting for this year, you're drafting for 2024 and 2025. And that's what I think the Bengals, very smartly, with some contracts coming off the books in the next couple of years, the Bengals are preparing for that eventuality, and they need, given the fact that they have bills to pay on the offensive side of the ball, and Burrow and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, if they can keep all of them, and who knows who else down the road offensively. They need to build young defensively.
Yeah, I certainly think that's a part of it. I don't think that was the reason behind them doing that. I don't think they took defense on purpose. Like, if, let's say, Miles Murphy isn't there and Dalton Kincaid is, I don't think they're just taking the next best defensive player.
Sure,
just because.
but that's a whole. But that's a whole. What I'm specifically saying is you're trying to take high value players on defense who can contribute, if not this year, certainly in years 2 and 3. That's my only point there.
Sure, and I think all three will contribute right away. I think Miles Murphy, as a run defender, is a little ahead of Miles Murphy, the pass rusher. But you want to talk about an elite athlete. This guy told you, and I interviewed him separately, told you that he didn't run his 40 straight, that it was 4.53.
Correct.
And if he had ran it straight, it would have been 4.47. That is crazy speed. Crazy for a 6'5", 270-pound, 268-pound, whatever you want to call him, type player. I'm really curious to see how Marion Hobby uses him. And you're right. I think long-term, could he be, a replacement for a Sam Hubbard, a replacement for a Trey Hendrickson? Yeah, that cap number for Trey Hendrickson's pretty big in
17 million in 2024.
And by the way, you can make that work if he's still playing at an elite level, but now you at least have some reinforcements on the line just in case. That said, I think this helps Trey Hendrickson. And if you're Trey, I think there's been some speculation, oh, he's mad, or, Sam could be upset. You guys should love this, because if you're Trey Hendrickson, guess what people are going to look at? Bengals, all 31, the other 31 teams. How many sacks did 91 get? Well, man, now you can stay fresh. Even if it's 5% of snaps, 10% of snaps, you cut those snap counts down some. Maybe you stay healthier.
Play less, produce more.
Be more efficient. Absolutely. And I think that's where the defensive line shuffle is going to be interesting, and Murphy plays into that. But I agree with you. Long term, could DJ Turner be one of these replacements? Absolutely. One, it's Cam Taylor-Britt insurance, because we don't know yet. Two, Chidobe Awuzie is coming off of an ACL. We know that. And so we'll see if he's back and how he plays. And Chido's also in the last year of his deal. And if he plays well, he's going to want to get paid, because he's been playing on a very team-friendly bargain contract for the past 2 years. And he's never truly, I get it, 3 years, $21 million is paid, but for the level of production he's given the Bengals, has not gotten paid. And so he might want to do that, and the Bengals might not be able to keep him if he plays at a high level this season.
Okay, let's move down the draft roster here
Yeah.
in 2023. Charlie Jones and
Mhm.
Andre Yoshavish. I knew I'd screw this up.
Yosivash. I got you. Yosivash.
Yoshivash. Thank you. I find those two picks fascinating, and I know in Dane Brugler's The Beast projection on The Athletic, they were actually back to back. I think 22 and 20, 21 and 22 in terms
23
of
and
rated
24.
23 and 24. Thank
I've
you
read The
very
Beast
much.
way too much, Trags. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sure you have. But they were actually back to back, and the Bengals get them essentially back to back, separated by Chase Brown out of Illinois, the running back. Your thoughts on those two receivers? I think they have great upside. I think Charlie Jones could be more certainly an impact as a kick returner for Darren Simmons than Yoshivish is for the Bengals offense. I know.
Yosivash. Yosivash.
Yo,
It
yo,
doesn't look like it's
yo,
pronounced.
Sivash. Yo,
Yeah,
Sivash.
there
There
we
you
go.
go. Yo,
Um,
Sivash.
a couple of things. I think that if I'm Darren Simmons, and I haven't dropped this anywhere else, you said all those platforms at the top, I would try Yosivash on kick returns. Just kick returns. I would try it. You know why?
Why?
Because
Yeah.
there are most of the time when he steps on the field, he's the best athlete. He had the eighth highest relative athletic score. And if you check it out, ras.football, Kentley Platt, big draft analytics guy, looks
Yep.
at all these different pre-draft metrics and the test scores and everything from agility testing, 40-yard dash, size, all those things. He was like eighth among all players in this draft class. I would try him there just to see. And I get it, he's 6'2", but man, he's got that speed. So we'll see there. But
You want to
let's
see
start
him
with
in the
Charlie.
preseason do that.
Yeah, and just in, even if it's in minicamp and training camp, just to see.
Yeah.
That said, Charlie Jones is my favorite pick in this draft. He's my favorite pick in this draft. And here's why. One, I love weapons for Joe Burrow. When you have a great quarterback, you get him weapons. You don't go the Patriots method of giving him one weapon a year and that's it. No.
Right.
You load up. This is a weapons league now. And I think
No
Charlie
question.
Jones is a day one, I'm going to be the best route runner on the field. And he might not be in the NFL, but he's one of them. Damn sure is one of them already from the jump. Ran a full route tree. I confirmed with Troy Walters at Purdue, 110 receptions, was the go-to guy, played on the outside. I think he's going to be a slot receiver for the most part in the NFL. But man, ran a 4.43 agility testing, really at a high level as well. The tape matches the testing, matches the ball production, has long arms, by the way. He doesn't have short arms, even though he's a smaller guy at 5'11", 175. I think Joe Burrow is going to love him and long-term projects as a starter in this offense. He's not going to start with the big three there, but can he contribute? Do we see more 4 wide receiver sets? I certainly think that's a possibility. And then the other part of this, you mentioned punt returns. I mean, he was the best punt returner in the Big Ten. And that's how they used him at Iowa, because their offense was just awful and they can't throw the ball. And I'm sure the Bengals noticed him when they were watching Sam Laporta film is, man, this Charlie Jones isn't getting the ball. And then they popped on that Purdue film and they were like, oh man, this is why you get him the ball. So I think he's a perfect fit and is going to produce from the jump. He is a little older. That's the knock on him. He's 24 and a half right now. I think he's 24 and a half and ready to go and ready to contribute at a high level in the pro game. So really, really excited about that pick. And then real quick on Yosivash, in round 6, if you can get a guy who's 6'2", 205, produced at any level, but produced last year, ran a 4.43, tested like the elite athlete, like I mentioned, well, that's a dart throw you take and you see if you can hit close to that bullseye. Maybe you get that triple 20 and you feel really good about it. I like the roll of the dice there, and I think he could potentially contribute in different ways. That's why I mentioned the kickoffs. Like maybe you put him there if he can do it at a high level. He's certainly the athletic enough to do so. So we'll see. That's just an outside the box idea I had, but outside of that, I think he can develop. Maybe not be an impact contributor in year one, but could develop into a contributor in the future.
You mentioned Troy Walters. Bengals wide receivers coach. Another undersold aspect of all of this is I have utmost confidence in this Bengals coaching staff, especially the position coaches. You already mentioned Marion Hobby, talking about Miles Murphy. Troy Walters gets his hands on these two guys. There's no doubt in my mind that they will be taught the mechanics that they need to succeed in this offense.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing and the beauty of keeping all of your coordinators, all of your position coaches.
Correct.
Is the familiarity. Everyone's like, oh, the familiarity and the in game and all of those things. Yeah, but the front office knows exactly what Marion Hobby wants and Frank Pollock wants. And we could go down the list, right? Brian Callahan, Lou Anarumo, and Troy Walters, because they've worked together. And so there's beauty in that. There's beauty in identifying mid-round targets and late-round guys. Lou Anarumo looked at DJ Ivey and said, oh, but, they brought him in for a top 30 visit. He's their 7th-round pick, right? Andre Yosivas, he was a guy that they went to dinner with, Ruth Chris, according to Troy Walters, and they wined and dined him. There was a report out there that he was in town for 2 days. So they identified certain guys that fit the coaches, that the front office liked, that they could come into an agreement with. And so when you have that, when everyone's in agreement, it's real easy to hit the ground running with those guys. Because if Brian Callahan and Troy Walters are in on Charlie Jones and the front office is in on Charlie Jones, well, then there's no, and I'll use it, Marvin Lewis with John Ross in 2017.
The most obvious example.
Was not on board with the pick. Front office loved the pick. Well, that made it real tough on Ross. I know it didn't work out. It probably wouldn't have worked out anyways. Made it real tough on Ross when the coach is like, all right, we'll take your guy. And it's just instant like, ugh. By the way, OJ Howard, the guy that Marvin wanted, didn't work out either in the NFL. So there's that. But it is good that I think they're on board with all of these picks because the coaches, you're right, are high-end coaches that might not be here much longer. Some of these guys, the good news is they're here now and they can coach these rookies up, especially the ones that have potential, but need some refinement.
My attitude on the following pick is this. You don't draft a special teams player, a specialist, punter or kicker without the expectation of him making the roster. I felt that way all along when they drafted Evan McPherson in 2021, and I feel that way about Brad Robbins in this year's draft as punter out of Michigan. Certainly Drew Chrisman, he handled things with as much class as you possibly could on Monday when we spoke to him. But I think the intention is for Brad Robbins to win the punting job for the Bengals.
I would be shocked if he didn't.
Right.
I honestly, and I'll just tell a story, the Jake Elliott story, which I was really critical in the moment of them picking Randy Bullock over Jake Elliott, regardless of camp, and in cutting a 6th-rounder who was gone, a few weeks later to the Eagles. I don't see a scenario unless Robbins is just awful where you can do that, because I think he's going to be good. And so if Chrisman is good and Robbins is good, who's going to win that job? I like Robbins because when you hear Darren Simmons talk about him, he realizes there's a science to punting, and it's almost like an art, which I really don't care about, and I don't think the casual Bengals fan cares about. Most people watching and listening, but guess who needs to care about it? The punter. He needs to understand.
You do care about it at the end of an AFC Championship game when it literally cost you the game.
Well, that's the point, right? Is the punter needs to understand that part of it. And so I'm not going to learn the mechanics or anything like that, but you're right. That's the time when I need you to kick it to the sideline and not allow a return, or have enough hang time to where someone can get down there and make a tackle before, it's a 30+ yard return and it puts the Chiefs in position to win the game. So I agree. I think Robbins is certainly the favorite to win the punting job. I would expect him to. And kudos to the Bengals for trading down, because I don't love drafting a punter. I don't. But
as you mentioned several times, sitting next to me in our cubicles in the media room.
Yeah, but it was a need, and they added an extra pick to do so, and they still got the guy they wanted in round 3 in Jordan Battle. So I think they did it the right way.
You mean you didn't trade up to take a kicker like the Patriots did? The Patriots are getting obliterated for that. Not that they took a kicker necessarily, but they actually traded up to
Yeah,
draft a kicker in the
I
4th round. I just don't understand the logic there.
well, in San Francisco took the kicker Robbins was
Jake
holding
Moody.
for at Michigan State. Yeah, at
Yeah.
99. Like you can't tell me this isn't the Evan McPherson effect. And people will say,
Yeah.
"Oh, what are you talking about? He missed some extra points last year." The Bengals drafted him in the 5th round, and he kicked them into the Super Bowl as a rookie.
He was a difference maker. There's no question about that.
And then the Browns drafted a kicker last year in the 4th round out of LSU. And then this year you got kickers going in the 3rd round and the 4th round, teams that are hoping to win this year. And the Patriots were awful on special teams last year. So maybe someone should, tell New England fans to relax a little bit. They're trying to get better there. Kudos to Belichick for doing that. It is early, though, to take a punter. But yeah, I think that this and kicker, because they took both. But
Right.
I think that the Bengals, their special teams were awful too. And they know that. So Evan McPherson needs to be better. They expect Cal Adamitis to take a step forward. As far as punter, Brad Robbins, they expect him to be the solution. And then at returner, look at this. I mean, I could see, Chris Evans or Travion Williams returning kicks, but obviously Charlie Jones is going to return punts, barring something really unforeseen. So they're trying to upgrade all of these special team spots that stand out.
All right, running back position, Chase Brown was taken out of Illinois in the 5th round. This gets to one of the biggest offseason questions, the future of Joe Mixon. What is your take? Is he on the roster? And is he on the roster at $12.8 million to start the season?
At 12.8, no. I think, look, Joe Mixon has more leverage today than he had, but if you're the Bengals, that money isn't, and I've heard people say this, like, oh, well, with that money, it's already sunk. You already committed to it. You're paying him 10 plus million. He has a $12 million cap hit, all of those. Or you realize that some of that money, that's not his market value. That's way more than his market value. Some of that money can go elsewhere. And whether that's Logan Wilson, T. Higgins, Joe Burrow, roll it over to next year and use it for insert Chidobe Awuzie. I mean, you could use that in a bunch of different ways. It's not like it's pay Mixon because work it out to where he still makes more than he would on the open market, because he wouldn't make anything at this stage on the open market. And I think this team is better with Joe Mixon, given who they did or didn't get in the draft. And that's no knock on Chase Brown, but it's not like they took a Jahmyr Gibbs or a Zach Charbonnet or even a Roshan Johnson. That didn't fall their way. Fine. So go this route. And I think that a pay cut would make sense. What I think is going to be interesting is everyone always assumed it would be a 1-year deal for Mixon with a pay cut. If I'm his agent, Peter Schaefer, and the Bengals come to me and say, we want your client to take a pay cut, I would say, fine, give us an extra year. And that's what would be interesting. Would the Bengals say, okay, at a lesser number and essentially rip up Mixon's contract and give him 2 years? Or would they say, no, we're not doing that? And then Mixon's camp just say, all right, fine, then move on from us. And I wonder what the Bengals would do. It's a delicate balance here. I don't think he comes back at his current number, but if I had to bet whether or not he would be back, I would bet that he will be.
Right.
But I could also see the path where he's not. So there's a lot there. Long story short, anything can happen.
I really believe that. You could convince me of any number of maybe 3 or 4 scenarios unfolding with Joe Mixon. Right tackle. We were both talking to Jackson Carman on Monday. He is trimmed down a little bit because I asked him about this. Have you lost weight? He said, yeah, I've lost a little bit of weight, but it's more about toning up and looking like James Rapien in the workout room. I want to be more flexible. I want to be more agile. He's taken up yoga. He's taken up gymnastics. He's taken up some MMA workout regimen. Your thoughts on Jackson Carman, at least the leader in the clubhouse, as the starting right tackle, with both Jonah Williams and Lael Collins coming off of surgeries?
Are you asking me if I think he's the leader in the clubhouse for right tackle? I'm just clarifying.
Yes.
No.
Oh,
no.
Why?
No, I don't. I think he's the leader in the clubhouse for the swing tackle spot, for the spot of backing up Orlando Brown Jr., because he obviously took some decent reps in the playoffs at left tackle. and backing up Jonah Williams at right tackle. Jonah Williams, to me, is still the favorite, has been the favorite. I don't care what his agent said when his agent shot from the hip and was honestly being doing poor agenting, which isn't a word, but I just made it a word because
It works for me.
yeah, I just, why would you request a trade and go public with that through Ian Rappaport 3 days later when all it did was tank your client's trade value? And the Bengals said, okay, well, now we're just going to make you play right tackle anyways. I think that the Bengals think Jonah Williams is a good player, not a great player, and they found a way to get Orlando Brown Jr., who's a high-end tackle in this league. People
Right.
can debate about him all you want. Look at the production. It's there, right tackle and left tackle. He's a high-end offensive tackle. And so with Jonah, last year was about health as much as anything. And let's tie these two together. We just talked about Joe Mixon and now Jonah Williams, and both are taking heat and their futures are in question. No one ripped Joe Mixon after he got hurt in 2020 and really struggled to produce because he was out. Well, Jonah Williams could have been out and he was playing through it. And there were different injuries. And I'm not ripping Mixon for being out. You're hurt, you're hurt. But Jonah was trying to play through it. And so he didn't produce. By the way, the Bengals preferred him to play through it because they didn't feel great about their tackle depth. Now maybe they feel a little bit better about Jackson Carman. The fact that he does seem to be maturing, that he's doing the right things, doing all of the things that, quite frankly, he should have done in 2021. Because if he had done those then maybe I would entertain this a bit more. But there's a reason the Bengals didn't trade Jonah Williams, and there's a reason they didn't take a tackle earlier. DeJuan Jones in round 3. Obviously, he didn't make it to them in round 4, which maybe they would have entertained it then. I think that they feel good about Jonah Williams moving to right tackle and Jackson Carman being the backup. They won't say that publicly. It's a competition. But if I had to pinpoint, who the favorite was, I would still make it Jonah Williams at this stage.
LC, third man out. What do
Sucks,
you do?
man. I like Lel, and I just the injury really derailed them because if he doesn't get hurt, he's just the right tackle. Jonah Williams is probably traded, and Jackson Carman's
could still happen if somebody is in, like the Patriots, who didn't get their tackle in the draft, and somebody goes down in training camp. Guess what? Somebody's going to need a right or left tackle. Name your spot, but it's going to need a tackle. Then Jonah Williams is out there, and the Bengals could get much more for Jonah Williams at that point than they would pre-draft.
I think there's a chance of that, and I still think they're open to that, and that's why you don't make a decision with L today, or make a decision regarding any of them. But I don't think there's a path for Jonah and Lyle to be on the roster together, because that's like $20 million for two right tackles.
Right,
and
I agree with that.
So it works itself out one way or the other, and I think it's Jackson Carman is the swing tackle, and then which guy between Jonah and Lyle makes the most sense. If Jonah comes out and is playing well and is healthy and all of those things, and Lyle is still dealing with a knee issue, coming back, not ready to go, which is pretty likely. He didn't have surgery till January. Obviously, he got hurt late December. And that's no knock on him. I think that's the direction it could go. By the way, he's also represented by Peter Schaefer, Joe Mixon's agent. So I think that part's interesting. Yes. But I feel bad because there's another universe, Trags, where Lyle just plays out the year. Let's just say they lose in the AFC title game, even though he's at right tackle. He would be their right tackle. Like, I don't think it would be this thing. It would be, he finally gets to rest and get completely healthy, play right tackle year 2 in this system. Jackson Carman could be the backup, and then you could trade Jonah and feel pretty comfortable with it and shed that $12.6 million cap hit. Now I think that it's, Lyle is more than likely the odd man out. We'll see. Hopefully he heals and can battle and maybe makes the roster that way, but I don't see both being on the roster.
No, and one thing I would say in defense of, not that they need me defending them, the Bengals front office and Duke Tobin have done a masterful job of letting things like this play out and not getting the short shrift. And I think they are going to do that again. They are not going to overplay their hand. They're not going to make a panic move. And I would say that the Bengals will let it play out for as long as they can. And then when they need to make a move, they'll make a move. What are you working on?
Oh, a ton at allbengals.com. I have grades for all 8 picks. Certainly.
I love
I
it.
have my guy Mike Santagata has a film breakdown of what Miles Murphy brings to the Bengals defense. So there's a
That'll
lot
be fun to
there.
watch.
Yeah, Cincinnati Bengals talk has a ton of different videos. We had some locker room stuff. I gave my thoughts on every draft pick. Obviously, plenty of stuff over the weekend, and then obviously Locked On Bengals. It's each and every day working on some interviews that I'm hoping to nail down this week, but obviously plenty of draft thoughts. We didn't take a day off. We recorded a pod
No.
after each and every round, so there's plenty of instant reactions, and more if you want to go back and listen. And obviously, we're still going daily through Thursday, and then we'll be back on Sunday. So it's like I think it's like 13 or 14 days with a show in a row because it's 5, then it's the
incredible.
draft, and then it's 5 more. So it's 13 or 14 days, something like that, Trags. No days off. We're team no days off at Locked On Bengals.
Thanks, Bill. I bust your balls a lot, but nobody had more enthusiasm nor more in-depth coverage than you did for the draft. It was tremendous to watch. Thoroughly enjoyed it. You had a reaction to every single pick in the draft, and it was my pleasure sitting next to you during a hectic, frenetic, shall we say, media room observation of the NFL draft. By the way, one more thing before I let you go, and we've got about 40 seconds here. Can the Sixers build on a game 1 win and upset the Celtics?
James Harden, 8 seconds to go.
Over Al Horford.
I loved it. I loved his performance, and just getting 1 in Boston is so huge. I think they have a real shot now, Trags. You need to get Embiid back for game 3, but you go to Philly 1-1. Hopefully Embiid's health holds up. Hopefully Harden can continue to play like this. Tobias Harris came up. Tyrese Maxey made some big shots and big plays.
Maxey. Oh,
let's go, Trags. I'm on board. I'm on board with shocking the world a bit because I think everybody had Boston.
All right. He is James Rapien of allbengals.com and the Locked On podcast. Be sure to tune him in and follow him on Twitter at James Rapien. I'm Trags at Trags on Twitter. Be sure to subscribe and download this podcast wherever your favorite podcasts are available. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.